Hello and welcome to the Garden of the Black Roses. This is fanfiction! So these are the next two chapters of my Ragnarok Online Fanfiction. Now I am going to do a pre-story note. So it's not in the next chapter, but it's in chapter 34, which is the second chapter that I'll be recording on this same audio, or this same session. I talk about the guild control room. So now if you've ever played Ragnarok Online, you'll know that there's a guild treasure room when you play, like when there's War of Imperium. So it's a room that only the guild master can enter. So the control room is kind of a similar idea. So I wanted to also, because there are characters that have come, gone, and all this other stuff, I wanted to make ethereal characters. So you've already met Ethan in the previous one, but these characters are kind of bound to their positions, and they were killed as like human characters, and they've come back with a second life, so to speak. Also in chapter 34, with Chibi being able to turn into a cat, and I've put in the idea that she can touch ethereal characters as a cat. It's kind of based around the idea that cats have a perception of supernatural beings and are able to see them. So it's... yeah. It is kind of just another vague idea that I wanted to play around with. Anyway, let's get into it. Chapter 33. Chibi jumped and landed on Nihog's long arching neck. She brought her sword down and cast Magnum Break. A burst of flame spun down her sword and into Nihog, causing him to move his head and neck around to throw her off. "You're faster than I last remember," he said, finally throwing her off. Chibi flew backwards onto his wing, where she used Azoth to create a long cut down the wing to slow her descent. "You're more chatty than I remember," Chibi replied, finally dropping to the floor. She glanced at Flight, who laid motionless on the ground. "This is going to be difficult." Standing, she cast Heal. I wish I could pitch at myself. "I see now what your future is supposed to be." Nihog swiped his claw and sent her flying into the darkness behind him to hit a door made of bloody red wood. "Go through the door." He felt the link to her homunculus break. "You have a choice to make before you can get what you want." Chibi shook, grieving the loss of her homunculus. She isn't dead yet completely. Chibi pushed the door open and walked in. 3 maidens stood facing her, their faces hidden under long white hoods. "You've finally made it here," the middle one said softly. Her hands held out a seed of life to Chibi. "Your life or your partner?" Chibi closed her eyes. Don't hate me. "I want my leaf back." Placing a hand on the seed, she called to her homunculus. Feeling a small hand on her shoulder, she opened her eyes. "Flight." "For the truthfulness of your decision," the maiden said on the left, "your life thread from the past is strengthened. For your wish to save another life other than your own," the maiden on the right said, "your life thread of the present is strengthened. And for your desire to destroy those who cut the life threads for personal gain," the maiden in the middle said, "your future life thread is restored and strengthened. No god can cut your thread without our power. Chibi smiled and bowed. Thank you, Skuld. She nodded to the maiden on her left. Erd. She nodded to the maiden in the middle. And Verdandi. She nodded to the maiden on her right and bowed once more. She felt Lack's insignia go warm again. You must return home, Erd said softly. Her fingers touched an unseen thread nearby. Someone's life thread near you is going to end soon, unless you stop it. Lack jumped away from a sword falling in his direction. What the? Lack threw spears at Contra and moved back to Black Rose. You should change back, he whispered. Contra is willing to sacrifice everything. I can feel it in his strike. He won't care if there's just me or if the whole guild is on him. Pressing his tattoo with 2 fingers, he sent a warning to all guild members. I'll stay as Chibi, she hissed. Hell is still to make an appearance. She pitched potions at him. She paused, her ears pricking up at a voice Lack couldn't hear. Call for Kashi when Hell arrives. He'll come when you do. Lack nodded and cast Ashura on Contra. Spinning, he stepped back quickly as Contra advanced on him without missing a beat. Ashura still doesn't slow him down. Black Rose pitched blue potions and raised her sword to block Contra's thrown shield. But he's predictable. Sharon walked through Velvet Touch of Anishi with John Flora at his side. The girls walked behind him, looking around everywhere. I want to speak to Mike if possible, Sharon said quietly. Grabbing his forearm, he felt his tattoo burn. Looking back at the girls, they touched their tattoos as well. As quickly as possible. He's in a meeting with the rest of the guild, John Flora replied, showing them into a smaller room. Rest here, and when he's done, I'll bring him in. Let him know it's about Yggdrasil. Feeling his tattoo burn more intensely, he added, and Chibi. John Flora nodded and quickly left to join his brother in the meeting room. Chibi walked back towards the Nephilim door. Her tattoo burned angrily. Lack's fighting and calling for the guild to gather where he is. I have to hurry. Chibi quickened her pace and ignored Nihog as she passed him. So, you have both your life thread and partner back, he said. Better hurry. My sister is going to be at the place you're heading now. Chibi slowed and stared at Nihog, her eyes wide. She wants Lack's head. To be honest, I don't see her fetish in owning heads. Eating them is much better. I prefer neither to happen to Lack, Chibi replied, and focused her power into her right earring. Just for now. Chibi darted faster than any creature in Rune Midgard towards the door. Bursting through it, she skidded to a halt. Chibi, Tadakono said, holding his neck tightly. Lack's calling us. I know. Chibi gave Ethan a little kiss on the cheek in thanks before jumping into the warp portal Phenomenon had cast. I'll come by again when things have settled down, Ethan. It's a promise. Just minutes away, Hel said with a smile, holding Black Rose tightly around the neck. Then you can die and become one of my personal puppets. I regret losing your knowledge, but your strength alone will suffice. Black Rose pretended to struggle and lash out at Hel. Lack accentuated her struggle by yelling at Hel and trying to get past Contra. His medallion Black Rose had given him visible while he snapped around. Hel gave one glance at it and smiled. Why don't you call the mediators to help you? Lack's eyes widened, then narrowed. His voice low and dangerous. I'll do one better. He drove Contra away from him and yelled at the top of his lungs. Kashi! You called? Kashi appeared in the room with Novus and Palador. He grabbed Contra's arm and threw him into the pole on the opposite end of the room. Lack snapped over to join him. I see you're more interested in gaining the information Chibi has, Kashi said, preparing a sure strike. But she isn't the only one who knows that information. He balled his gloves tight and settled into an offensive attack position. I know it too, and you know that I know it. You took their blood while they were frozen. Feeling Chibi's presence behind him nearing the door, he added, You can release yourself from disguise, Black Rose. Having Hel hold you like that must be incredibly uncomfortable. Black Rose changed and stabbed an immaterial arrow into Hel, forcing her to release her. Definitely uncomfortable. She flapped her wings and flew towards Kashi, landing behind him and Novus. Chibi touched the door. A familiar feeling washed over her. You go in first, Chibi said to Phenomenon and Tadakono. Something is telling me to wait. Tadakono and Phenomenon pushed open the door and went inside. At the same time, Black Rose ducked outside. Black Rose. I need to give you a small briefing before you go inside, Black Rose said, touching her neck, feeling a little faint as a voice rippled through her mind. Hel doesn't know where you are at the moment. I need to know what happened. Chibi's eyes widened as Black Rose traced the faint scar-like line that spiraled up her forearm. Kashi will hear this directly as well. I have my life thread restored, Chibi said, still looking at Black Rose's arm. The Norns restored it. Chibi paused, wondering if she should continue. I chose to revive my homunculus with the seed of life, because Nihog had attacked her, and they decided to restore my life thread because of the apparent pureness of my decision. So basically you got two things instead of one. Kashi's voice sounded near Black Rose. Chibi squeaked and turned into a cat. Don't worry, I can't have you come inside. You're useless as a cat. Then remove the binding, Chibi mewed. Black Rose picked her up and gave her a pet. Or do you really want to keep me as a cat? I've been one for almost 5 years now, she added crossly. Not entirely useless as a cat. The problem is, Kashi's voice said, a little strained, not whether I want to keep you as a cat, but whether I want to unbind Ethan as well. You two share a binding. He chose to shoulder most of the blame. That's why you're a cat, and not something worse than that. Black Rose turned to face the door. Black Rose, I need you to come back inside. Bring Chibi inside as well. Black Rose pushed the door open and stepped inside. Chibi jumped out of her arms and climbed up Black's leg to sit on his shoulder. I'll lend you my strength to increase yours, she mewed in his ear. Giving him a little kiss on the cheek, her spiritual power began to flow into him. She closed her eyes and curled herself around his neck and sank her claws into his shirt. Lack gave her a little pat on the head. Safest place for you at the moment. He cast Fury in preparation for a sure strike. Flight cast Emergency Avoid on him and floated cautiously behind him. Darting from left to right, Lack came at Contra and brought his hand up to use Palm Push Strike. What are you doing? Chibi mewed in his ear. That's not going to hurt him. Her words punctuated by Contra hitting the wall opposite them. At least it won't kill him. I wanted to see what my strength is now, Chibi replied, looking at his hands. You're... Chibi rubbed her head against his neck in response. This is good. Gathering his power, he launched a full assault on Contra. On the other end of the room, Tadakono and Phenomenon directed the rest of the guild against Hell. Seen Syao yet? Tadakono called to Phenomenon, casting a Storm Gust shield to allow Kakaki and Ferrari-san to attack more freely. Haven't seen him at all, Phenomenon supported Leaf and Trelawney. Bright Eyes, Illusions and Mina are missing too. What's this about? Micrax asked, sitting in front of the three. I doubt Lack has given you permission to talk to me about anything. Sharon tested his ability to talk about the current situation. When you went into Yggdrasil with Chibi, were there any difficulties that you met? Sharon's voice caught in his throat. I see Lax used his guildmaster abilities on the information, Lax said with a sigh. Yggdrasil itself is a labyrinth. If you aren't mentally prepared in what you are trying to attain by being there, it becomes a cage more than anything else. But once you are determined, it becomes a long corridor. The door to the heart of Yggdrasil is guarded by Neog, one of Loki's children, Bright Eyes said, shocked. There's no way. Her voice also caught in her throat. Micrax looked at them and then at their tattoos. Bright Eyes covered hers and added, Lack's calling us because Contra is there, and possibly with Hell. She looked at him in the eyes. Come help us. It is possible Lack will tell you himself. Contra and Hell, Micrax mused, leaning back. I can't enter armed without the permission of the Guildmaster or his second-in-command. That means only Lack and Chibi can give me permission to enter Fight Club headquarters without me being practically killed as soon as I step in the door. I'm next in line after Chibi, Sharon said quietly. Myself, Tadakono and Phenomenon. You can enter with my permission until Lack or Chibi certifies it. It's a failsafe the two of them created after the first battle with Contra. Micrax looked surprised at him. You'll risk Lack murdering you? Sharon nodded in agreement. Then go get John and Kaya and we'll come with you. Lack cast a surer strike on Contra, pushing him hard into the ground, his sweat stinging his eyes from the prolonged battle. The fur around his neck shivered slightly every now and then. This battle is going for too long. It's taking its effect on both of us. He brought his fist up towards Contra's ribcage. He's showing no signs of tiredness. Kashi cast a surer strike on Contra as well, his anger increasing with the knowledge that Contra was not wearing down. Novus swung his axe through the air across Contra's chest, and then looked at Lack before nodding to Black Rose and Palador. Palador darted around and moved in front of Lack to continue his assault. Black Rose moved to stand beside Lack. Drawing her bow, she said, Rest. We'll take care of him for the moment. Chibi's going to pass out soon anyway from supplying you power. Lack didn't move from his spot. Black Rose drew a flash arrow and shot it directly at Lack's neck. Lack dodged and moved away from her. Go rest, or I'll fire more. Lack stared at her incredulously before nodding and snapping away. You all right? Lack asked Chibi, stroking one of her ears. Release your connection to me. Chibi relaxed completely and mentally snipped their connection. Chibi? Dizzy, Chibi mewed, feeling a very familiar presence nearby. Mike's going to be here soon. With Syao. Good. Lack sat down hard on the floor. He watched the rest of the guild fighting hell. I hope he brought help, 'cause they're wearing out as well. Micrex cast Spiral Pierce, his spear thundering down on Contra with increasing speed. He glanced at those fighting hell and at Lack every so often. This is difficult. Hell being a god, she won't tire as easily. Contra, on the other hand, should be tired. Skidding backwards from Contra's thrown shield, Micrex crouched down near Lack. What's going on here? Lack took Chibi off from around his neck and set her on the ground next to him. Hell was originally here to watch Chibi die, but now that that plan had failed, she's here to kill us all. I still have no idea why Contra is able to battle for so long now, like he's a hidden god. He patted Chibi's black fur. He could feel her taking very deep, slow breaths, like as if she was sleeping. I drained her too much of her power. I don't know if I can handle Contra without her power, especially after seeing you battle him. Micrex scratched his head, frustrated. You'll need to explain to me everything later. If you're alright, come back to the battle. At least both of us against him is better than fighting one at a time. Lack nodded and got up. They darted off towards Contra, noticing Kashi fall back towards where Lack had been sitting. Kashi knelt near Chibi's cat-like form. Since when could you and Lack join your power? Since the day I warped Azoth, Chibi mewed quietly, staying still with her eyes closed. You already knew that. Wanted to see if you would answer me truthfully, Kashi replied, stroking her fur gently. His power flowed into her to assess her status. Can you answer me truthfully? Why did you give Ethan the secret to create gold from stone? Because I needed the secret he knew, and he wanted a secret that I knew, Chibi replied evasively. It was a trade. And that was? Kashi prompted impatiently. Chibi stayed silent for a while. Your answer could set you both free from my bindings. Before Contra, Chibi replied slowly, there was a war between us and you guys. Do you remember? You were in Velvet Touch of Inishi at that time, Kashi said, uncertain about what she was meaning. You mean when we first appeared? Yes, Chibi said softly. When you first appeared, no one knew what or who you were. Because of this, I became worried that if something was to happen to Mike or Lack... Ethan had returned from the outer world, namely Rachel, and he had found a secret within Freya's temple that would increase strength for life or magic. I asked for that secret. Ethan, in return, asked for the secret for creating gold. I know that everything is equal trade in alchemy, so I gave him the secret in exchange for the one I wanted. Was it worth the trade? Kashi asked, looking up at the battle. He was dissatisfied at the level her spiritual power currently sat. I don't know, Chibi replied after a while. I have never needed to use it on either of them, especially now that I'm able to link to Lack. But the secret itself is incredibly dangerous, more so than creating the legendary items. If I was to use the secret on either of them, I could possibly kill them. Kashi stood and snapped back to the battle. Flight floated down and sat next to Chibi. Can still talk? A little, she whispered to her. Flight tugged at her green hair. Lack was cautious, but drained more than he wanted to. You sure you don't want to use that secret? Only if I have absolutely no choice, Chibi replied with a yawn. Besides, I'm sure Lack can take down Contra without it. He just isn't trying his hardest at the moment. He hasn't had many adversaries that can draw out his fullest. Chibi lifted her head, then moved slowly until she was crouching. Can you take me out of this room? Flight nodded and picked her up, flying off towards the hall that led to Chibi's lab. Lack looked up and took a mental note that Chibi and Flight had left the room. Micrex fell back and stood next to Lack, his breathing laboured and heavy. Where did they go? Probably either Chibi's lab or to the guild control room, Lack replied, throwing spears at Contra. Either destination means Chibi has an idea she wants to try. And you don't mind her not telling you? She already has, Lack replied with a smile, and assured Contra 3 times in a row. Micrex looked stunned before striking Contra with his spear again. Chapter 34. Chibi stood in the hall and turned back to a creator. She walked quickly towards the guild control room. I wonder if the controls will obey me. Lack's the only one who should be able to manipulate them. She looked at the glove she still had from Lack. Unless... She touched the door to the guild control room with her right hand. Lack's glove resonated with the machinery inside to open the door. Lack! An ethereal sniper ran to her before skidding to a stop. You're not Lack. I'm not, Chibi replied, holding up her right hand. But I'm representing him at the present time. The sniper drew her bow and pointed it at Chibi. Who are you? Chibi drew out her insignia from the Alchemist Society and took off Lack's glove to reveal her Fight Club tattoo. The movement caused the sniper to release an immaterial arrow at Chibi, burying itself into her shoulder and disintegrating to seep into her skin. Chibi tensed in pain and focused on getting her task done. Recognize me now? Chibi. The sniper lowered her bow, with another immaterial arrow in her free hand. I can feel Lack within the guild. Why can't he come himself? Because Contra and Hell are where he is. She pulled Lack's glove back on and tucked her insignia away. I can't be there unless I'm in cat form, because Kashi is also there. So he sent you? The sniper continued, still not completely convinced. Chibi sighed and leaned against the wall with mock confidence. She knew she hadn't given Lack her complete idea. You could go ask him, but once he flattens you in response, it'll probably be too late to do anything. The sniper put her bow away and asked, What do you want me to do? Create 2 jail cells that can hold a god, one inside the other, Chibi replied, looking directly at the sniper. Make the bars only just big enough for a small cat to get through, but not a human body. That will take some time, the sniper replied, realizing why Chibi told her there wouldn't be enough time to do anything if she went and asked. She looked at Chibi carefully. There's something else you need to do as well, isn't there? Chibi nodded. In my lab. I'll be back here when I'm done, and we'll implement this plan. She stepped out of the room, only to look back briefly. Thank you, Itami. Lack felt his left glove burn briefly. Ignoring it, he came in close and punched Contra hard with it, the glove leaving a burn mark across his cheek. I didn't know my gloves could do that. Jumping back, he forced his magic into both gloves and punched at Contra again, leaving burn marks where his fists connected. Novus handed a purely metal sword to Microx. A silent message passed between them. Microx drove the sword deep into Contra's chest and moved back, letting Novus cast Lord of Vermilion directly at the sword. Fire melted the sword, forming a tight ring around Contra's body. Lightning danced over the metal, biting and sparking over Contra's skin. He growled angrily and lashed back at them. The metal tightened against his chest. He grabbed a hold of Lack and threw him. Moving faster than possible, he took a hold of Microx's armor and threw him at the same direction he had thrown Lack. Kashi threw golden chains to bind Contra's arms and legs. Lack landed on his feet and skidded, bringing his hands to the floor in an attempt to stop him from hitting the wall. Microx flew towards him and planted his spear to prevent crashing into Lack. Contra screamed and broke the chains. He looked around the room wildly. Tiredness slowly seeped into him. From the corner of his eye, he could see a blue figure running towards him, turning into a cat and leaping at him with both claws bared. Chibi! Lack yelled in fury, watching the floor open up and both Contra and Cat fall through it. What the hell? Feeling claws up his back, he jumped. What did you do? I morphed a part of Kiseki to act like me, Chibi mewed in his ear. Itami created 2 cells that can hold a god beneath this room. Contra is in the inner cell, with the outer cell around the one he's in. So if he breaks out of that one, he has the other to get through. Should buy Kashi's time to work out what to do with him. She gave him a small kiss on the cheek. Itami listened to you? Lack asked, surprised, feeling Chibi's power flow into him again. He darted towards the rest of the Fight Club guildsmen to help with Hell. I thought she would have come down to ask me. She wanted to, Chibi mewed, swiping her claw at Hell when Lack was close enough. But after I told her that you'd flattered her because she was wasting time, she complied. I still have your other glove too, so I guess that helped. Although I do need you to heal me properly later. Her immaterial arrows still hurt even though she's ethereal. Phenomenon, Tadakono and Syao came close to Lack. How are we going to take her down? Phenomenon asked, breathing hard. I tried calling Tia, but he's not interested. Leave the god calling to me, Chibi mewed at him. Hell hates holy magic, so use things that are holy in nature. Poison and other offensive style magic skills aren't going to work well on her. While Chibi continued to explain, she asked Ear if she could get Fawcetti and Thor. Hearing an almost instant reply, she tapped her tail against Lack's back happily. Lack nodded, feeling her tail against his back. All right. He waved his hand to his right. Fen, take the assassins and assault that side. After preparing Ashura, he pointed to his left and added, Syao, take our knights and attack from that side. Microx joined Lack. John Flora darted behind them and became their support. Kaya moved to join Phenomenon. Mina moved to join Syao and the knights. Lak looked at Tadakono and nodded with a silent command. Tadakono moved out of the room with the rest of the guildsmen and moved quickly through the hallways and came back into the first room through the doorway behind Lak. Nowhere to go now, hell. Chibi stopped tapping her tail and smiled. Tadakono noticed and smiled back. Unless she goes back to hell. With one sweep of his hand, Lak directed the entire guild to attack hell. From the corner of his eye, he watched Kashi and the hidden gods deep in conversation about Contra. How long would it take for them to get here? He murmured quietly to himself. Them, as in Forseti and Thor? Chibi mewed, picking up his murmur. Lak nodded slightly. Ia says it will take a while, but they'll be here soon. They are coming from a great distance. How great a distance are we talking? Lak asked. The weight on his shoulders felt heavier. Chibi? She didn't reply. Her claws held on to his shirt tightly. As long as she doesn't fall off, it should be all right. Feeling a cold presence heal him, he looked back to see an ethereal high priest. Chibi's not here? The priest asked, not noticing the cat around Lak's neck. I thought she'd be here supporting you. He cast every support spell in his knowledge on Lak. She's supporting me in another way, Lak replied, feeling one of Chibi's ears tickling his cheek. I thought you couldn't leave the infirmary. I can't if Chibi's here, the priest replied, looking around the room. If she's within the grounds of the guild, I can't leave the infirmary. Noticing Lak's confused expression, he added, It's the condition on me being a spirit. And you can't sense her within the grounds, Lak confirmed, slowly touching the cat on his shoulders to make sure it was still there. The priest nodded his head and watched Lak carefully. Chibi twitched her ears, and Lak took her off his shoulders and held her in front of him. How low is your spiritual power at the moment? Low, Chibi replied, extending her claws at him. You're holding me in the most uncomfortable and undignified way. She leapt out of his hands, and sat on the ground next to the priest. El can't sense me because my spiritual power is low. I've been supplying you the bare minimum just now. She licked her paw, then rubbed her ear. I can't turn back for a while, but that's all right. You're able to defeat hell without my help, especially with El here to help you. An ethereal Lord Knight stood in the outer cell with Atami. Think he'll get out? He asked her, quietly watching Contra punch the wall of his cell repeatedly. He's not too bright, though. You doubting my ability to morph this building, Saria? Atami asked angrily. Lak gave me the order, and I did the best job of it possible. You mean Chibi gave you the order? Saria said with a smile. Chibi didn't tell Lak what she had planned until after it was done. She only told Lak that she was going to see you to help with her plan. Itami shook with anger over being tricked by Chibi. Don't worry, Lak would have still flattened you if you went to ask him. He just would have flattened her as well afterwards. I wanted to ask you something, though, Itami said quietly. How did you pass on? I died in the same battle you did, he replied, not looking at her. His hand touched his neck unconsciously. Lack, Elle, and I were attacking Kashi, and I don't remember much. But I protected Lack, and Kashi's sword came down across my neck, killing me instantly. I see. Tami sighed and watched the wall break away a little from Contra's fist. And is that how Elle died also? No. Saria blinked and listened carefully. Elle died after that. I don't know the circumstances surrounding his death, but like you, Chibi bound him to his designation with Ia's help. Hel sat tiredly on the floor, her arms bound by Fossetti's golden rope. Thor stood with Milgenaire in hand, ready to attack her if she appeared to attack again. Lack dismissed a very tired guild. Elle and Chibi watched him carefully. They both knew the length of the battle would have taken its toll on him. He'll collapse soon, Elle said quietly to Chibi. What do you want me to do with him when he does? Strap him to a bed in the infirmary until he's 100%, she replied, flicking her tail from side to side. Not much else we can do. Looking around, she noticed Itami coming up to them. I'm not here. She scratched her ear and stretched like any other cat before curling up. Itami glanced at Chibi, then at Elle. Seen Chibi? Elle shook his head and gave her a smile. Then maybe you can answer this question. How did you die? Elle froze, restraining himself from glancing at Chibi. Feeling her tail hit his leg hard, he took it as a warning. I don't really remember. All I remember is that I was with Chibi and Lack. Then, I'm a spirit looking down at my body with a sword through my heart. He gave Itami a small smile. Both Lack and Chibi will murder me for telling how I died. Though... He glanced down at Chibi before looking back at Itami. I guess I need to be more worried about what Chibi will do to me, since she's the one I'm keeping the secret for. Just curious, Itami asked, pressing Chibi gently with her foot. Who's the cat? I've seen Lack carrying it from time to time, but I've never gotten a chance to ask him about it. Chibi extended a claw at Itami, forcing her to withdraw her foot. You'll need to ask Lack that, Elle replied, once again feeling Chibi's tail against his leg. This cat abuses me too much, so I can't really answer you. You're better off asking Lack. Itami gave him a confused expression. Chibi stood and left to bring Lack. She's gone to get him. Chibi returned with Lack following her. What's going on? He asked, feeling Chibi climb up him to perch on his shoulder. Her tail curled around his neck. Elle gave him a small "help me" expression. Itami wanted to know who the cat is and where Chibi is. Lack gave Chibi a little pat on the head. This is Black. He gave a little wink. He added, She's kind of a little mascot character for the guild lately. She acts like a human from time to time. Glancing at Elle, he added, She likes being mean to Elle. I'm not sure why that is, but when she feels like it, she can stop him from talking. Pausing for a second, he answered Elle's second point. Chibi isn't within Fight Club at the moment. She went to the Alchemist Guild with a request from me. How else were you able to leave the guild control room? If she's here, neither you nor Elle can leave your posts. Itami gave this information some thought before asking, So then maybe you can answer this question with her sitting there. Lack looked at her confused. Earl told me he doesn't remember how he died. Lack gave her an even more confused look. He said that you and Chibi know how it happened, and Chibi isn't here to ask at the moment, so... I actually don't know either. Lack gave a sigh and felt Chibi's tail brush up and down his neck. Chibi is truly the only person who knows exactly what happened. I was there, but I didn't see it. He laughed and added, "Good luck trying to get it out of her. I've tried to the point of almost being driven to beating it out of her." Lack's vision blurred slightly, and he leaned forward, putting out his hand in time to stop himself from falling. Huh? I was all right just a second ago. Come. Earl extended his arm out to Lack. I'll take you somewhere to rest. Chibi jumped from Lack's shoulders and sat in Lack's field of vision with a worried expression. You're worrying Black. Earl ducked under Lack's arm to support him with Itami under Lack's other arm. You should know by now battles that drag on that long have this outcome when they're finally finished. And that's it. Probably about 3 more audios left to go for this story. Yeah. We're getting to that point where I was writing and there's no server anymore. So I think from chapters 35 onwards? 35, 36 onwards? The server doesn't exist anymore. So I'm writing from memory. And incorporating ideas and storylines and things like that that I was to use later on or to test out for my original piece, the Iron Wolves series. But yeah, that's it. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, give me ideas, give me feedback, anything really. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. And as always, let your imagination run wild. Bye for now.